Three, two, one. Super progressive. What is good, everybody? We're back with another interview. And today we don't have a DJ, we don't have a producer, but we do have someone whose impact on this scene is still felt to this very day. His contribution is a timeless one to underground dance music culture. Today, we have global underground photographer and photographer of many other things, Dean Belcher. Dean, thank you so much for joining us today. We are both so stoked for this one.
Mm-hmm.
And we just want to say thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, no, thank you for inviting me.
Well, I remember, bro, I owe so much to you because I remember back, this was maybe almost like 2.5 years ago now when we first met. You were probably like, who is this kid reaching out to me? And we made this little animated video about your kind of like highlights of your global underground career. But
I did.
Yeah, and it went so well. And then the other day I was looking back through the video and I realized how many people were fascinated by that video and how many questions they had in the comment section that went unanswered. So I was like, wait, we got to do a proper interview with Dean. And, since then, our paths actually got to cross in person. And that was with Danny Tenaglia's Global Underground 45 Brooklyn album, which for me personally, not only was a dream project because working for Danny and seeing it all come together, but to have this world of like the history of underground electronic music, the history of this progressive sound, have a project that's alive and happening in 2023 was amazing. It was it's all happening crazy, right now. It's not just something that's in the past.
No, it's still going strong. Lots of thanks to young people like yourself, obviously.
Oh no, but I mean, dude, that project, like you got to spend a lot of time with Danny too. That project was so cool for me because I got to see you in action. And I think that's like kind of like a pretty cool place to start with. Because so I got to go with you for the cover shoot, which was shot right outside the area where Danny was raised in Brooklyn. And we did some other shots around the Manhattan Bridge and stuff. But I think it's a great project for us to kind of see what your process is like for photographing a global underground album. Can you kind of walk us through how that Danny Tenaglia project went for you, kind of day by day, and what you sought to accomplish day by day to end up with enough photos to make an entire photo book like they did it for the deluxe bundle?
Yeah, well, I guess it's not dissimilar to the process it's been since the beginning, but a little bit more less chaotic nowadays, which is good. Suits me better. So what we try and do is obviously go to the city that's been chosen, and then we try and do a little bit of I try and do a little bit of a recce these days and have a little look around, have some ideas in mind of the places we might use because they kind of have to fit within a sort of brand and a format and what have you. And then when we shoot the club, usually shoot. This was a great one for me because it was during the day, and I'm not overly keen on 6 o'clock in the morning endings anymore. And then for me, I guess my favorite bit is always the wandering around the cities because I can then just go off and do my own thing and photograph what I see in a city in a short space of time, try and create an image of, take you on that journey, But with Danny, it was really good because we had ideas of where we wanted to photograph him. He was really up for it, he was dead keen. And that makes things so much easier,
Definitely. And It was cool to see how, like, I could imagine that kind of being a tough project if the DJ is, and it's not nothing bad. Everyone's different, but if the DJ is kind of timid or shy in front of the camera, how you would have to kind of bring that personality out of them. But with DT, he's obviously, I mean, he's in his hometown. He's in Brooklyn. He's
Sure.
giving us
Yeah.
like a history lesson
Well,
of like every place that we're going to.
Yeah.
You know, he was like a tour guide for us. I'm sure it was, I mean, I experienced it. It was just a really fun, really natural photo shoot.
Well, he was really proud to show off his city. Not everybody does it in their home city, but in fact, not many. I think only two or three. And so they're kind of they might be familiar with it, but they're not as familiar as he is. And also, I think just as things have gone on and on over the years, people sort of realize the DJs have kind of realized how kind of important it is to get it right, you know. So it's a lot less chaotic.
Definitely. I have one question for you, and this goes back to our first interview. But one thing I knew about you with the original Global Underground shoots is that when you would get the famous city shots, not necessarily with the DJ, but the city, what you would do is you'd go out and you'd wander around without a map. You just turn right here, turn left there, look for something interesting. Now, with these photo shoots now in the present day, you have everything you could ever want to learn about a city in your pocket with your iPhone. You could look up best places to shoot photographs, most important locations in a city, most photogenic places to shoot photos. What do you just like put away your technology and still wander around the same, or is it a little bit different process than it was back in the day, pre phone and digital map apps and all of that?
It is a bit similar because we're not really after the postcards, you know, the what you see in like travel guides, normal regular travel guides, you know. So we're not looking necessarily for those things. I might head towards them sometimes, but that would be my sort of route. So I'll just go, right, I'm going to go and walk towards so and so, but it might take me 3 hours to get there rather than 20 minutes on the bus or on the cab or tube, metro or what have you. So in that period of wandering around aimlessly through these streets, I get all the other stuff that's really interesting. There is a theory behind it, which I only found out about 3 or 4 years ago when I studied to do an MA in photography. And it's called flaneur. And I didn't realize that we'd probably been doing it for the past 25, 30 years. But basically, the city sort of guides you through itself. It's got a life of its own. It's kind of like there's a whole world that you could talk about. People write theses about it, but it's like basically called psychogeography. And basically, you just literally let the city take you where you want, where it wants you to go almost. So it's a whole different sort of, that was never my, I didn't know about it. I'm not professing to know that that's what I did, but subconsciously, that's what's happened. I would turn one way. I have a real thing about going around in circles as well. I don't really like going back on myself. Even if I go down the shop from my house, I have a route that goes in a circle because I don't like to go back the same way. I don't know why. So that's kind of how that works. It's a real sort of meander, and you find lots of things. Sometimes you end up in dead ends. Sometimes you end up in really cool places. And sometimes you miss things because you've been preoccupied with other stuff. When you get back home, you go, oh, perhaps I should have gone there. But, you know, it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, it's so cool to hear you talk about it like that, because then almost it seems like maybe to be less prepared is almost advantageous because you're just letting yourself go with the flow of the city like you were talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you know, you mentioned that you don't go for like the postcards necessarily, like, you know, you're kind of walking through the back streets, taking the more, I guess, underground photos. I'm
Yeah.
curious, if you were to go back to these cities that you photographed, do you think you'd have trouble finding some of those same spots? Because you just happen to come across them so,
Probably, yeah.
spontaneously?
Probably. Although if I really wanted to go and find them, I kind of remember some of the things, but no, you're right. It is quite difficult to find some of those places again. Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's so cool. It reminds me of what really inspired by Carl Hyde, right? He's the lead singer of Underworld.
Mm-hmm.
He says that his lyrics, I mean, Underworld's lyrics, like they seem so chaotic and kind of so abstract, but all he ever said was he's just hearing the poetry of the city itself. And it reminds me of your approach to photography of the city too. You're just like taking what it's giving out and being guided by the energy that it's directing towards you.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. That's definitely the case with most cities. They've all got most places, and because they're new to me as well. It's easy. It's much easier if it's somewhere that I'm unfamiliar with. We did one with Danny Tenaglia in London. And that was probably the hardest one.
Oh, interesting. That's your backyard.
That's the hardest one we've ever done for me, because I kind of know where I kind of knew I had not even preconception. I didn't know where to start, because I could literally go, where do I go because I live in a certain part of London. When we go to a city, we're often dropped somewhere I don't know. And I don't get really any choice on that. I don't choose the hotel. So we just go, right, that's fine. And that's good, because I don't have to make that decision. I just go, right, I'm here, and I'll go out the door that way one day and out the door that way the next day. And then meander, really. I mean, as I said, sometimes I do go, right, well, I'm going to head towards the castle, or I'm going to head towards a certain bridge, but that might take me through lots of different routes that wouldn't be direct, the direct route you would go if you had an appointment that you needed to be there at a certain time. So you find lots of stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Sometimes you find dead ends. Sometimes you find a little bit of danger. No, not war zones. I've never been terror in any, I would never profess to that, but there have been areas where you go, where people have warned me out afterwards and said, oh, you probably shouldn't have gone there, or
That's awesome. You mentioned that so they would drop you in a random spot in the city. I'm curious, did the artists or maybe some of the global underground folks, did they ever have an idea of where they would want the cover photos of each city?
Oh yeah, nowadays, definitely nowadays, for sure. I think at the beginning it was much more random, because, well, it was really random, because I didn't even know what time. There were no set times or anything like that. So I might have gone out at 7 o'clock in the morning and wandered around all day, and then got back to the hotel, or when phones started to happen, someone would ring me and go, oh, so-and-so's got up now, they want to go and do the pictures. Well, I might be the other side of town. Right, okay, I'll come back, and then we'll go off and do them. Now, so that was real chaos, but it was kind of all down to the DJ's timekeeping, obviously, which aren't always the best.
Yeah.
And obviously their schedule, partying, after parties, all that sort of thing. But I think that's changed a lot, in as much as, well, first of all, I think DJs don't tend to work like that so much anymore. But also, we tried certainly in the last few, especially like Danny, with Amelie. I'd say the last sort of 6 or 7 maybe, we've said, right, okay, we're going to do the pictures on Friday afternoon at this time and work until that time, and that is it. But previous to that, we might do an hour here or a couple of hours there, when they're kind of you know, Darren Emerson, I remember we got out of a party in Uruguay and he seemed to be quite keen to take some pictures. So we went and took some pictures on the beach, you know, and then we went a bit later in the day, or maybe 2 or 3 days later. So we don't get it all done in one hit. Now it's much more organized. The first people that ever did that were Deep Dish. I remember him saying, we'll be in the hotel room lobby at 1 o'clock at this time, and then we'll go and do this. And they were there. And we did it. And that was really, really odd because that was the first time it ever happened.
That's awesome. Was that the Toronto or Moscow?
Toronto, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And that was quite interesting for me because I'm used to kind of working that way with lots of other clients. You know, most of my other work is not as chaotic as that because it's, you know, I'm commissioned by someone, there's productions and it's all mapped out a little bit. This has always been a bit seat of the pants, but that's been one of the things that's made it really interesting, you know. And we've tried to keep that going, even though it's a bit more organized. I still feel like the look of it and everything's still as exciting as it was, you know.
Oh, definitely. And well, I think it's cool what you're saying, because even with Danny's, I can't imagine like Danny's photographs for Athens and London working the same as they did in Brooklyn. But I'm wondering, do you feel like just with the evolution of social media and also the evolution of like the DJ being more of like comfortable with being a superstar figure, it almost seems to me like these new DJs are kind of more media trained. Not even new DJs, like Danny too. Like they all have a better understanding of like, okay, these photos need to happen. Like there's a time and place for them, and it's part of this process that may have not been present in the first ones, where it's just like completely still underground culture, like, you know, superstars to a small group of people, complete nobodies to the main population.
No, that's definitely the case. Everybody that we've photographed, I couldn't even remember how far back, but certainly in the last, you know, Joris, Amelie, a few maybe even before that, they're very conscious of what they've got, of what's happening, and have an input, much more of an input. So Danny was good on this one, and a few. There's been the odd person along the way, like with Danny Howes in Miami. You know, we set a time. He had some styling and all that sort of thing, which is kind of what I would normally be used to with some, you know, other things, other clients. But some of the other guys, they just, you know, they pay attention to how they look and all that, but it's much more casual, let's say, a casual approach. But then it wasn't such an important thing, you know. It wasn't going to be splashed over social media, you know. It would be shot for the cover of shot for the album, and a bit of press, so like magazines would use the pictures and things like that. But now obviously everybody's kind of aware of how important it is to create that sort of image as well to sell product, you know, I guess. So Amelie was really good with that. Joris was really good with that. Danny obviously got it as well now. We've just done something with someone else, which I can't talk about, obviously, but that was again really well, you know, all well thought out, you know. So yeah, it has changed quite a bit. It makes it a little bit easier for me because I don't have to. We don't panic. I don't have to worry too much about where we're going to do it, you know. Because sometimes we'd literally be driving along, go, right, that looks good over there. Let's do it there, you know.
Yeah.
But not always. Sometimes we go, right, let's try this little area and and sort of spend an hour or two just using what we saw there, you know.
Yeah, definitely. One question I have before we like really jump into the questions about the specific photo shoots is this. Mm-hmm. It's kind of along the same lines, but one aspect, I think you have one of the coolest jobs on earth, but there's one moment each photo shoot where I'm grateful that I'm not you, which is photographing the clubbers inside the clubs, because I am so shy when it comes to stuff like that, pointing my camera at other people. My question is, how do you like feel comfortable bringing your camera into a place where kind of purists believe that cameras shouldn't be? And have you noticed a change since kind of the advent of the mobile phone, where now everyone's got their phone taking photos, taking videos, compared to a time in the 90s and early 2000s where there was like literally no documentation besides probably what you were shooting in the clubs, where some of the other mixed mag and DJ mag photographers was kind of the only documentation of what the hell was going on in there.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. Well, in answer to your first question, it's probably the bit that I get most anxious about still now. It's a little bit out of my comfort zone. I am older, but even as a sort of in my sort of 30s and things like that, I'd started going out to parties and clubs in my sort of like mid-teens, 15, 16, 17, and did quite a lot of it, not within dance music. And I kind of felt nightclubs aren't my sort of comfort zone, you know, or clubs as such. You know, I don't tend to go to many. If I do, it's specific types of thing with lots of people I know. So going into a strange place wouldn't be something I would normally do. And I do find it quite difficult. The first sort of 10, 15 minutes, you probably see me looking quite nervous. It takes me a little while to get going. And it's mostly because that thing that you're talking about, I do worry a little bit, especially as I've got older, that it's a bit of I'm not really wanted, you know. It's not something that's kind of like, I think back in the day, it was kind of okay. There'd be one or two people, and people weren't really used to being photographed, but they were kind of up for it. I mean, there were some people who would say no, definitely not, you know, and there were people who got angry. There was not that many, but there are a couple of people who've got angry over the years. But now I think because everybody takes pictures, it's kind of the norm. But still, I think, I don't know whether I'm going around and contradicting myself now, because the more I think about it, actually, it's kind of easier in a way, because everybody's being photographed. But I think they kind of question what I'm photographing it for most of the time. You know, so there's people there from the clubs often who are doing it for the club's social media.
Right.
I see a lot more people with cameras at gigs now, at clubs now, than I did back in the day, because it might only be one or two. But now there's someone from the club, it's someone from, I don't know, there could be 6 or 7 people there doing different things, you know. And then all the people with their mobile phones. Most people are okay with it still. Lots of people don't like the flash thing going on anymore, which with technology you can not use. But the type of pictures that I've always taken, I kind of use that as a technique. So I still do it. So it's not too, you know. There was someone in Glasgow for an album that didn't come out that got really angry about it because it was a very dark club, and he said I was like really ruining the atmosphere. but that was, he was the first person in 20 odd years I'd ever heard say that. So yeah, I mean, I probably struggle with it the same amount as you would, but because I kind of just know that I've got to do it, I get it sort of done, and then when it's done, I kind of feel a bit of relief. Actually, when I get into it, after the first sort of 10, 15 minutes, I start to quite enjoy it, because I'm actually documenting when I first started doing it for Global, I kind of didn't see it as just photographing clubs for the album. I saw it as a sort of social documentary. I wanted to photograph it as if I was making an archive of that time, and I kind of still do a little bit, I think, but I kind of wonder how many more of them how much more of that stuff people want to see, because it's, as you say, in the 90s and the 2000s, there's stuff that I've got that, and a few like other photographers who did the same sort of thing have, but now there's tons of it, on people's phones,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, that one, to answer.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question. So I think another thing that's changed today, like, obviously everyone's got the cell phones, but I think with the clubs and just like the way they kind of like what you were talking about, they have like, there's tons of different photographers or people videoing. And so now I think they're very official with it, with like, like a press pass or something like that. And when people see that, I think they don't really question what's going on. I'm super curious. Was it like that at all back, 20, 30 years ago? Well, did they give you credentials like that, or was it kind of just way less formal?
I don't get credentials, funnily enough, for the Global Underground ones. I've never been given a press pass. So no one ever sees anything on my chest or around my neck and go, oh, he's supposed to be here. Mm-hmm. More and more people go, what are you doing it for? And I say, Global Underground. And sometimes they'll go, what's that? Because they're kind of there for something else.
Yeah.
And I say, oh, we're making an album with so-and-so. I'd suggest that perhaps 8 or 9 out of 10 people who ask me that question ask me, where can I buy the picture? Because they kind of assume I'm that dude who goes around photographing people. Then you put it on a website and they can buy their picture of the night, which I didn't realize until recently that that's something that was kind of like a phenomenon. But and I also get a lot more people asking me to photograph them than I used to. People tap me on the shoulder and go, take my picture of let me get my picture. And I kind of think like it's one of those pictures. So I kind of take the picture, but then I try to avoid them because I want stuff that's not like that,
Yeah.
So I'm always quite polite. And sometimes those pictures work, but most of the time I'm trying to find people who aren't consciously trying to be photographed. So it's a conversation. I'm always having a bit of a conversation with people. Mm-hmm. So I'm talking to people. If I see someone I really I think looks great, I'll try and have a conversation, whether it's verbally or just like a visual nod or something, and make sure they're kind of cool with it, or I've done it and then make sure they're cool with it, and those sort of things. It's kind of a bit like any sort of street photography, really. It's a bit like that, but in a club. And I do get quite excited when I'm in there. I mean, I find the euphoria and just the general joy a real a good motivation. It's good for that.
Awesome. Yeah, so cool, man. So I want to take it back to your first project with Global Underground, which was, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think Global Underground 6, John Digweed in Sydney. But what was unique about this one, and I'm not sure if this is verified or anything, but I think you only did the cover photo for that one.
Yeah.
And that was the first one you ever did with Global Underground.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, this one is probably my favorite cover in the whole series, just because it is so unique. The one I actually have is the vertical box. And I think they only did 2 ever vertical ones. They did John and then Paul. But you have John looking through his eyes like this. And I
got one somewhere.
I'm really, I want to go cover by cover and kind of, yes.
Yeah, there it is.
So like, how does that moment happen? Because I know for a fact that John is probably not going up to you going like this.
No.
Like what this is your first project with Global Underground. What is your mindset to try and get like a cool cover? Because when you came on for Global Underground 6, something changed with the series. Those covers, it's like they found the recipe.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the first 5 or the first, GU 1 through 5, the first 4 albums were kind of like prototypes. They were recorded live. The covers were all different styles.
I dug one out for you. I dug one out. This is a Tony DeVitt, which I didn't do. But
Oh, yeah. But it's such a different look. And then it seems like when you came on with this John Digweed cover, it got that iconic DJ is the superstar like look that remained consistent for so many releases consecutively after. But what was that first shot like in the studio with John, your first one ever?
Well, that was when the guys from Global first approached. Well, do you want to know the story of how I got found out? Well, I was photographing some stuff for Music magazine, the rival of Mixmag, and I just photographed Goldie in Los Angeles, and it was my first cover for them. And one of the first covers it was a bit of a departure for Music magazine, because up until that point I'd been working with this guy called Vincent, I can't remember his surname, who made these sort of quite heavy Photoshop images. They were photo illustrations, really. So I think Danny Tenaglia was on a bunch of water skis in a
Ibiza.
Sorry?
I think it's like for a DB, like it was promoting Ibiza, but
I don't know.
No, I know it's like him. It's him standing on himself. There's like 3 of him on the water skis.
Maybe that was it. Yeah. Well, anyway, Vincent used to make these quite elaborate covers, and I think basically Music magazine decided they want to have covers that were a little bit more real. So I did that was my first one for them, and that was the first time for a long time they'd used someone who wasn't Vincent. And anyway, the long story short was Andy and James were looking for someone they got this idea, this sort of superstar DJ thing, I think, and this whole global, I don't know, as you say, these things, the first few were kind of like a testing ground a bit in terms of, I mean, they might tell you something different, but they were selling tapes, obviously, and then mixtapes, and then they decided to go a bit more legit, and then they were doing this stuff, and they were working with magazine photographers and the people that were going working with them. And then I think the idea was that they wanted to, they knew they were onto something, and they wanted to create this brand and look, and the whole idea of us taking you on a journey with the DJ to whatever city they want to go to. So anyway, it was, luck for me, right place, right time. They rang up the magazine. As far as I know the story, this is the story I have been told, is they rang up the magazine, asked if they knew any photographers, and I just happened to be that one at that month that was kind of flavor of the month, because I'd done a cover for them that had done quite well with the Goldie, and it was quite different to the ones they'd done before. Oh yeah, we got this new guy, Dean, and that was it really. They called me and they came to the studio. We talked about it. They came to the studio. There was no talk of going on the trips or anything like that at that point. So we went and did the studio cover, and the idea, I think, was initially for me to do the covers like that, and then they would work with someone locally. And then I don't know what happened with the Sydney thing, but when they came back, the next one, they said, we're going to New York. We want you to come with us, So I think Paul Oakenfold was the next one. Yeah, so that's how that happened. And when we got to the studio, it was kind of it was a bit of a makeup on as what are we going to do now? So I think John John's quite shy, isn't he? Really, if I remember rightly, like a lot of them, they're kind of, especially the guys, they're kind of quite shy guys. I think in front of the decks or whatever when they're not playing or whatever. They're really into the sort of music and that's their sort of thing. The whole sort of superstar thing, posing for cameras, I don't think many of them are that comfortable with. And John was the same, you know. And I think it might have been Andy who said, "Do that, do something with your hands," you know. And that was it. I can't claim anything really, you know, with that. I think it might have been Andy or James or someone said, or they might have said, "Get them to do something with their hands," you know. And I might have been asking them to sort of do some certain things, and John has done it, you know. Yeah, so it's kind of like that, really, how that happened. I mean, it's not terribly dissimilar to lots of people who are slightly uncomfortable in front of the camera. You just have to sort of try and squeeze something dynamic out of them, you know, if it's not their personality necessarily.
Yeah, no, definitely. And one question I have is before we go to the stories behind David has some albums here that we'd love to hear the stories behind is, one thing that I thought as the series kind of progressed was that your photos perfectly complemented Dom Phillips' journalism on the albums where it
actually
was
I think you'll find it's the other way around.
Oh yeah, his
I'm joking.
No, but like I just think your guys' kind of approach, it seemed like you guys were so on the right page that this was like about like cultural immersion. Let's drop the listener not only into the music, but into a sense of time and place in this exotic city. And I'm just wondering on these trips, how much you and Dom would work together on these kind of journalistic missions, your method being the camera, his method being his pen. But if it was kind of like, I don't know, if you guys were doing things in tandem or if you guys were kind of feeding off each other, like I spoke to this interesting person or
there was definitely a bit of that. Dom, not always. I can't remember right at the beginning, but me and Dom would, well, sometimes we'd share rooms. So we were talking a lot, you know. Out of the whole sort of crew, I'd say me and Dom spent the most time because they were either partying. I mean, realistically, the only two people who were doing any work was me and Dom, really. You know, that's what I said. But no, but the rest of the time, so there was a lot of partying going on with the DJs and a lot of the other people. I mean, obviously Andy and James were doing their things. So I'm joking, but me and Dom did spend a lot of time doing the work, you know, when we were there. So that's what we were there for. So he would sometimes Dom and I would walk together. Sometimes we wouldn't, but if we did walk together, and he came on a lot, he would obviously be there often for the shoots. He'd always be at the clubs. So he would go off and talk to people at the clubs. I would photograph people. And sometimes we'd come back, did you speak to that? Did you see that guy there? Or did you speak to that guy? Or that woman there? And yeah, they were funny, weren't they? And they talked about, so it did sort of gel quite interestingly. And if we were in the street walking around together, we might bump into certain people, and if you thought he was interested enough, he'd speak to them. But quite often, I think he'd just be, or he might look at the pictures afterwards, certain things like that. But he'd already done his sort of walks around as well, so it kind of just gelled into each other. You know, he was such a talented writer anyway. Kind of like he would take the images and he knew about the cities, or he'd do his research, or he'd talk to someone, or he'd often be talking to people and certain promoters and things like that, and DJs, and then he'd just put it together. He'd write that story that would make it look just, it was perfect. I mean, the pictures were, you know, obviously really part of it, but he could take those. If we hadn't even been together on those trips, he would have took the pictures and because he'd been there and talked about it, knew about the place and what have you, he would have done his research and he would have written about them, told the story anyway, I think. And in other times we did do things really quite like on purpose. So he would say, I think when we went to Miami, he said, I'm going to find 6 people and ask them about this and this, ask them all the same questions. So I'd photograph those 6 people that he'd found and we'd talk about the same things. And I think we did one in Ibiza with Sasha, where we did the same thing. We took them on the roof and I did some portraits and he did ask the same sort of questions to them. There was a few incidences like that. But yeah, I missed him.
No, totally. I think I speak for, David, but also everyone, where like when my older cousin gifted me these Global Undergrounds 2.5 years ago, that kind of like sparked my obsession with this era of music. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just the music that, the music was kind of like the gateway, but it was seeing the photographs and the travel logs that just made these stand out so much different from the rest. Like it's really amazing.
And I think the idea they hit upon was just brilliant for the time as well. Literally at the time, DJs were starting to become global superstars traveling the world. My God, you've hit it on the net. Basically, what you got to do is show everybody else what it's like, take them on that journey, and that's it. You're away, And they did it. So they still do it really, really well, And I think that's something that they really, it was groundbreaking. Mm-hmm. They were the first people to put DJs on the cover of a mix album. They made them they didn't make superstar DJs, I'm sure, but they were the first sort of big brand to do it. Dance music.
I think the packaging too.
The packaging's always been really important. Massively.
The way they've got the different, like the limited edition, the long boxes, and the vinyls too. I think it's really cool for me to see like your photographs, how they work in the different formats too. Did you always take them knowing that? I guess once the series was more established, you knew that it would go to these different formats. But in the beginning, did you know there would be like a long box or there would be the vinyl?
No, what I did do was, with the long box, I always shot it so that we knew that they could be used square or long. So there was space. Mm-hmm. There's always a lot of negative space. Saying that, perhaps there isn't on that one, but there would be negative space in order to be able to put the type and the format. I knew the format was going to be that, as opposed to like shooting for record sleeves, or CD sleeves, which are always square. We had to shoot with that in mind, but also bear in mind that they needed to be used obviously square as well. So there was a bit of I did have to think about that, but once the formula sort of was there, it's kind of not terribly difficult. Mm-hmm. I tend to photograph a lot of pictures, no matter what I do, with a lot of negative space anyway. I like pictures which have got space to breathe anyway. So it kind of suited me really, really well. And the whole idea of it, was, it's total freedom. Even now I speak to people who go, my God, it's like the best gig ever. Because you literally, I kind of get to do what I want, really,
Yeah.
Wanders around the streets of cities.
Yeah. It's like, no, it's cool. It's like the same freedom that Global Underground granted the DJs with their track selection and the soundscape. Exactly. They granted with you as a photographer.
Yeah, and Dom as well, I think, probably to a certain extent. Probably, yeah, definitely. I think the good thing they did was they realized that once they got their sort of idea and sort of team together, that there was a sort of way of working, that it was good to let people do what they do best without too much interference, and it kind of continues on that way, and I just for me personally, I've always been quite happy because I just know that at the end of it, there's always going to be something that's going to look amazing. You know, it doesn't, it, it, you know, the books, the whole long packaging, the travel logs to begin with, you know, all those things, you don't get those sort of outlets for your work that often in without doing your own sort of personal projects with no one else involved. You know, for magazines, they always crop your pictures differently to what you envisage, and you know, all sorts of things like that, you know. So for me, it's been all, you know, it's been something that I've been able to sort of I guess, yeah, it's just allowed me to, it's just nice to see it used how you kind of see it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. Okay. There's a photo in your background that we have to ask about.
Yeah, I put that there because there's a real mess in that corner. It usually stands in another corner, but it's so messy. I'm trying to fix a few things you might be able to see.
Well, we need to ask you about that photo because
Yeah,
it's got to be the most famous photo ever taken to represent this culture.
Yeah.
It's Sasha in San Francisco
yeah.
with the clubber lighting his cigarette. What is the story behind this photo that represents, I think, in one photo, everything that the scene in the late 90s was all about?
Well, I can't claim fame for any of that apart from taking the picture, because my friend Dom, my dear old friend Dom, he mentioned he it was out probably 2 or 3 years in the booklet and the Sasha thing, in the Sasha album. And for me, I just, and especially at the time, I was busy, I was just getting on with stuff. But he said something about it being one of the most iconic dance music pictures of that time, around about that time, not, you know, a few years later. And I didn't really sort of see it to begin with. I thought, well, why, you know? But then he kind of explained it, and then as I've spoken to people about it, they've all sort of said the same sort of things. And I think it just encapsulates basically this sort of whole, you know, Sasha was at, you know, right at the top of his game. I suppose he's never not been, but he was properly like the big superstar of the underground, you know, this underground scene. And this club was probably, well, it was tiny. I mean, I can't put a number on it, but I would be surprised if there was 1,000 people in there. But it was probably supposed to hold 500 or something. I don't know. It was absolutely rammed, and it was kind of before this sort of dance music had kind of got big in America, if I remember rightly. You know, so I'd say probably anybody who's into dance music on the West Coast was probably in that room. You know,
Yeah.
they'd probably come from all over the place to the gig. And you know, a few years later, or maybe 2 or 3 years later, we went there with John Digweed to Los Angeles, and you know, he played to maybe 5,000 people. So it was starting to get bigger then. But at this point, it was still really quite quiet. I mean, I think Spundi, they put all the gigs on and all that.
Yeah.
So you'll have to excuse my ignorance, because, as you know, I'm just not an expert on. It sounds crazy, but I'm just not an expert on all that type of thing about the history of dance music in that respect. But so he, so that picture then became quite popular with, you know, just people sort of asking to see it and use it and what have you. And then I don't know, it's just become this sort of phenomena. And I've actually ended up speaking to a lot of the people who are in the pictures as well.
Oh,
So
no
they've
way.
got in touch, you know, and gone, oh, I'm in that picture. You know, I've spoken to the guy who's, is it a guy or a girl? It's a guy, isn't it, who's giving the light? Yeah. So that guy is giving the light. I've spoken to him. So the girl that's next to him, that's looking at Sasha, became his wife. They got married.
Oh, wow.
They were there together. So they're not together anymore, but they are still really good friends. They have a couple of kids and all that. And I spoke to them, and I sent them some pictures recently, actually only this year. His sister got in touch with me and said, "Oh, it's my brother." And I said, "Oh, I didn't." And he said he'd never seen the picture, never seen it. So I sent him a picture because his sister said, "Oh, his kids have got to see what he's was up to back in those days, you know." So I sent him the picture and his wife and another copy. And then quite a few of other people who were in it have got in touch as well and told me about it. Yeah. So it's kind of one of those pictures that I think evokes memories. But I think the thing about it was it's just that it is that sort of whole superstar kind of adulation. People stood in front of the decks, which you don't get quite so much anymore, I think, because people are too far away, you know. And this whole lighting of the cigarette, you know, that was San Francisco in California when you're not allowed to smoke.
Yeah.
I got chucked out of the club for smoking. I used to smoke then, and I got chucked out of the club. And I had to really talk my way back in. You know, I'm with the DJ. It doesn't matter. You smoked, you know. Well, I didn't know we weren't allowed to smoke. I'm from London, you know, we smoked. So anyway, I got back in. He's allowed to smoke. I'm not. But then again, you know, like he's a so yeah, that was quite an interesting. It was really kind of interesting to see that. And I think it's only with time that it's become more relevant as to what it really means. You know, at the time I just saw it as a kind of cool picture, just another picture of a DJ, maybe, I don't know. But as time's gone on, I can sort of see it. And I kind of quite like the there's that Michelangelo picture on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, where God's touching the finger of, and I kind of sometimes think I'm not saying it is, but it's kind of like there's that whole like worshipping thing, and he's kind of like, it's that hand reaching out sort of thing. So if you want to get really sort of like theoretical about it, then there is a little bit of that godlike imagery going on in there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's so cool to think about it like that, especially like, because also, what is it? The prophet of Zechariah in the same room was used for the Renaissance, the Mix collection cover.
Yeah, that's right. They did do something like that, didn't they? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, don't quote me on it was not intentional. I'm not going to pretend it was.
But it's like, that's the divinity of the photo. Also, it's just like that relationship of like, yes, they're gods, but like the clubber needs the DJ and the DJ needs the clubber.
Oh God, yeah.
And like, what's like more like symbolic of that than like, do you have a light? Like it's literally
let there be light.
I mean, poor old Sasha. I don't really know him outside of the 2 or 3 times I've photographed him, but I understand he was never comfortable with that sort of superstar sort of DJ status thing going on. But you know, and I always found him really down to earth and quite, you know, a really nice guy, and I can see why other people would probably think that as well. You know, with this picture, he's just kind of part of the crowd, part of the scene.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. Before we move on from this album, do you get a chuckle out of the fact that clubbers from all over the world have literally pinpointed the location where you took the GU9 San Francisco cover photo in front of the Golden Gate Bridge and are always posting their own versions of the same photo?
I've not seen it.
Oh, it's awesome. Like have you
seen
the pictures on Facebook?
Yeah, I've seen some.
I saw one thing on Facebook recently, and I thought, and I think it was something to do with some like progressive house group or something. And I didn't really pay much attention. I just thought it was one guy who'd gone, this is where Sasha had his picture taken, you know. Yeah. But I didn't know there was a whole bunch. I would like to see that. That'd be quite good.
So I remember Will went on a trip to Athens, and he was like, I gotta take the GU Athens photo, and you had the Yankees.
I can't even remember where that was now.
Well, it looks like it's taken in a rainforest based on the background. I was like, where the hell is this thing? But yeah, it's like, dude, those shots are like, they're just like burned into the memory. It's like, you go to Athens, you gotta wear the Yankee hat like DT did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he likes a cap. Yeah, I can't remember. I can't remember where we shot that. I got a feeling it was inside somewhere
Oh,
because it was
it
raining.
must have been. I was like, there's no way there's this foliage in Athens anywhere.
No, I think it was in. I think it was in a cafe or something because it was raining. Because we've
It
only
was
had a
Boy
few where it's
Scouts.
rained so much
Yeah.
that we've had to go inside. You know. Yeah, there's been a couple where it's been raining so much that we haven't been able to shoot outside the cover, but not many. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, no,
Yeah, but no, I'd like to see. I'd love to see everybody do it for all of them. Go to.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Great.
it would be awesome.
Yeah.
David
I
has
was gonna
another
say,
one right here.
I've got a couple of the CDs here. I'm just looking at them, and I think like I don't know. So this one is one of my favorites, the Ibiza.
We got it signed.
Yeah, and I just was able to do that like a few weeks ago. But I just think it's incredible how like you really capture the essence of the location, like you said, without showing any like major landmarks. Like even like on this one, it's sort of the background's a bit blurry, but you get like the vibrant colors that everyone associates with Ibiza and then the beach.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
This is one of my favorites. There's just like a glow in the photo,
Yeah.
like from the sun, and I just think it's incredible.
Yeah, that's kind of what a good. Well, I think the difference between. I think if you could do that with photography, that it's more of a mood. You're trying to create a mood rather than go, "This is us." I mean, probably the Sasha one in front of the Golden Gate Bridge was probably one of the most literal ones we did. I don't. Well, it wasn't used in the American issue anyway. It was only used for the UK one for a while. Even I think I don't even know if it was.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember now, but we always try to avoid that. Too much.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think it was in the long box. It was the other CD.
Why did they use the different covers on that one? I never understood.
I don't know. I think it was something to do with the American. I think you'd have to ask Andy that, but I think they'd done the British. They'd only been releasing via UK, and then they got a deal with an American label or American distributor, and they were kind of. That's why I think the numbers changed as well.
Yeah, it was like 3 or something or 2.
Yeah,
that one.
they were the American releases as opposed to the British ones, and I don't know exactly the story behind that, but yeah, that I think that was probably the point where we probably went, yeah, it's no good just sticking someone in front of a landmark. You might as well do it down buy a picture of this Golden Gate Bridge and do it in the studio. It's pointless. It's more about the atmosphere, of the city. So none of them are that obvious, I think, since.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. Do we want to like go through the stories of each?
Yeah. So can you kind of tell us the story of like how this? We're gonna go through some of the iconic ones, but like, what's the story behind this cover shot? Was this taken? I know you guys did all the interviews on top of space. I think I'm not positive, or like on that rooftop with all the clothes that you interviewed. But can you kind of walk us through like this?
Yeah, so that wasn't there. That was actually at the hotel where we stayed in the north of the island, and I think it was because Sasha was quite elusive. He wasn't around a lot. He kind of got lost, I think, on that trip. And I think if you read the stories behind it, I think it's in the sleeve notes. So I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. I think it's quite common knowledge, but I think he kind of like just went and had a good time. And the taking of the pictures, and that was one of the situations where the taking of the pictures was definitely not like top of his list. So I think what happened was, he came back to the hotel at some point, and I think we shot that. I know we did some stuff around Ibiza town. Definitely, we did 2 or 3 shots around Ibiza town. But I think that was one because that was when in the days again when it was broken up a bit into like, right, let's grab them while we can. It was often like that, grab people while we can. So he was in the hotel, we grabbed him before we went off somewhere else, you know. And I think that was just as the sun was dropping. There was an idea that we were going to do a shot like that. Actually, I definitely remember some being talked about going, at some point we need to get a shot of the sun going down, you know, Ibiza classic Cafe Mambo type idea. And that was that point where we got him to do that. And then the rest of them were probably a little bit more as and when we had him. But that was quite typical of how things worked then with everybody. You know, it wasn't as well organized in terms of this is where we're going to go and do it. You know, it could get to the last day and we'd be like, I don't know if we've got the cover shot, you know. Because also don't forget it was film as well. So I wouldn't have known whether we've got it necessarily. I mean, I know from experience, I know that, you know, just through looking through the viewfinder, I know, oh, well, this is great. You know, that could be potentially a great cover. But, you know, it isn't a definite until you get back, process the film and all that sort of thing. Whereas now we kind of make a lot of decisions and you can also go back to things and go, right, okay, that hasn't really worked. Let's try something else, you know. But yeah, that was definitely one of those slightly chaotic ones, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Jägermeister, I remember being involved.
Nice.
It's so funny.
And so here we've got the Nick Warren Amsterdam. What can you tell us about?
So Nick, that one I can't remember a lot about actually. What happened in Amsterdam? So I think we were going to do it in Berlin. There was an idea of doing it in Berlin that I think got somehow. I think we might have shot a cover for it as well in Berlin. And I think that got scrapped as an idea. Can't remember now exactly. And then we went to Amsterdam, and so Nick's always been really, really helpful. He's probably, you know, all of them like to have a good time, but he would. We got on quite well, and I think tended to he kind of helped me out. So if there was, he'd be open to ideas, you know. So that Amsterdam one, I can't even remember that shot. I'm really sorry about that one. I can't even remember much about the trip.
Well, it's cool.
And it wasn't because I was like going crazy, because I tended to be probably the least of that, you know, although at that age I was able to drink and what have you and work. I probably was doing more of that, more working than partying than some of the other. But I can't remember that one very well, the Amsterdam one.
It is cool to me that you know, Nick's done more global undergrounds than any other artist. And what it kind of what I'm understanding now is like you're probably like pretty good friends with Nick Warren just on the fact that you've gone to some exotic places with the guy, and like knowing that he's, you know, just as much into fishing that he's into DJing. I imagine him being a pretty cool guy to travel the world with. Yeah. And
I can imagine he would be. Yeah, I mean, obviously I've only known him through these things. I very rarely like would chirp up on Facebook or something that he's put up or something, and what have you. But, you know, I wouldn't, you know, I'm sure if we were introduced to getting in a social situation, we'd have a conversation. It'd be great. But I always really liked him for the fishing thing. I always thought that was a really cool thing to get on going fishing. I'm not going partying. I'm going to go in Iceland. He was really focused on the idea that he wanted some time because Iceland was a great place to go fishing at this lake that was like, you know, for the type of fish he was into, you know. Yeah, it's very that is kind of like the antithesis of being a DJ in a way, because it's so calm and quiet and you've got to take your time, and, you know. But then I think quite a lot of those people, a lot of the DJs are kind of quite methodical people, you know. They've got to be, really, you know. I don't think you can be good at what you do. Any of them can anything that they do without the skills and the mythology and the processes and the knowledge and all that. You know, it's not just rock up and go mental, is it? As we all know, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it makes
Not,
sense.
it's not by chance that they're good at what they do, basically, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And it like translates into their other hobbies where you find that like, the other stuff they're into are like super in-depth things like fly fishing, which takes a lifetime to figure out how to do, from making the flies to like doing the whole thing. It like makes sense. These guys are like in-depth professionals.
Yeah, it does make sense. It really does that you got that. I mean, yeah, I quite like that when I get to speak to people, you know, about their outside of what their sort of public images is kind of. I mean, you find out with a lot of people, though, if I'm honest, there's very few people who are kind of like, you know, as rock and roll as their public image says they are, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Which one do you have next, David?
Yeah, next we got the Dave Seaman Melbourne.
Melbourne. Yeah, that was an early one, man. I think a long time ago.
Yeah, and then there, I this one and the Cape Town, to me, that's like the iconic Dave Seaman with the sunglasses. And,
yeah, I like that one. I like the one in Cape Town as well. The one in Melbourne, what did we do there? There was lots of it was a good party. I remember that. Was it close to Christmas? I think it was close to Christmas or New Year's or something like that. I think it was just after New Year's, possibly. Because I remember I stopped smoking on that trip. I woke up one morning and I had the worst hangover ever. And I thought, it can't be the booze. It must be the cigarettes for some reason in my head. So I stopped. And the next night we went out and did the same thing again, drinking heavily. And I felt okay the next day. So that's what convinced me. It was like cigarettes. But yeah, that was a really good, really good trip, actually. It was good fun. The party was in an old railway shed, I think, or siding, and it was rammed. Yeah, really good atmosphere. I remember that was good. And the jet lag was horrendous. I remember that. That was horrendous. I've never had
that's crazy. So before. You're going all the way to Australia. Are you really only spending like 3 or 4 days there for the whole trip?
Yeah, that was a really quick trip. I mean, that was really quick. We were there. I mean, I think in total it was like nearly like 6 or 7 days, but you know, it's 2 days there and 2 days almost getting there, 2 days almost coming back. You know, by the time you stop off and all that stuff and you lose your time differences and all that, I think we were probably only there for like 3 days, 3 or 3 nights, something like that. And it was the first day, I remember just like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I could barely stand up. I've never had jet lag like it in my life. You just literally like, I can't stay awake. And the other thing I do remember, actually, now you've said it, is I do remember spilling some red wine over John Digweed in a I think in the afternoon, about that time, when we were all getting tired, I was really tired, and I think I just like. If I remember, I think that was the case there. Yeah, he was there. I'm sure he was there. I'm sure that was that
in Melbourne.
He wasn't very happy about it. Quite rightly, you know. But yeah, no, it was really good, that one. Really good.
I was going to ask too, because this GU is unique in that it's like, I think I'm not sure how many there were, where they did like a kind of like a video that came with the CD.
Yeah, Dom did a lot of them.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, do you remember them filming that? And were you in it? You might even be in it.
I'm in a few, usually the back of my head. And me sort of barking ridiculous orders, asking people to do stuff. So Dom did a lot of those films to begin with, especially. And they were always really good fun. Yeah, they kind of did that. I can't remember which was one of the first ones. I can't remember. Was it Melbourne? I don't know. Might have been Dave. Dave definitely did one. I do. Oh, yeah. It was either that one or Argentina. Might have been Buenos Aires with him. I can't remember, but
Mhm.
I remember Dom doing them all. Yeah, it was really good because I mean, at the time, it wasn't so easy to do self shooting. So he'd have a camera, but he'd also have another guy who was helping him do the sound. So it was more of a sort of two-man, which is still quite a small team. So it was all bigger cameras, quite a sort of slightly bigger productions, yeah. And it was quite hard to do on the fly, doing those sort of things. But he managed to sort of make it look kind of like still as sort of fluid. And there was a program on the TV in England called Rough Guides, which was a real travel program that was shot like that, really sort of like from the hip sort of stuff. And I think that's kind of what that whole idea was all about. But yeah, Dom did some good stuff with that. Yeah, there's some quite funny moments. And
Yeah.
Oh,
I remember getting out of a van in Buenos Aires and them shouting at me to get in the van. And I was taking pictures of some lads playing football. And I got back in the van, and the guy who was from Buenos Aires said they were debating whether to rob you of your camera or not. They were literally going, "Shall we rob the stupid English bloke or not?"
Oh wow.
And I didn't know that. I was just photographing, going, and they were saying, "Come in the van." I was like, "No, it's fine." And little did I know that I was in danger. But
oh yeah.
Awesome.
We have one more for
Yeah,
you.
this is the last
Yeah, go
one.
ahead.
This is one of my favorites. The John Digweed LA.
Yeah, John,
Yeah, and I
great sunset.
yeah, no, this one's interesting to me because I feel like a lot of times they have a very serious expression, but I don't know, this one he's almost got sort of like a Mona Lisa smile.
He has got a little Mona Lisa smile going on there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was always trying to get them to smile. I have to say, all the DJs that I photographed, I was always trying to get them to be a little less unhappy about it because
Sasha could not look more unhappy about his Ibiza photo.
I know, but don't forget, he was probably under some duress in terms of he had been partying quite hard, I think. So the last thing he probably wanted to do was be photographed. But and that's often the problem, because the last thing people really want to be doing, especially then, was to be photographed because it wasn't as normal in really.
Yeah.
Because as I say, there weren't that many people putting them on the covers and things like that. You might do a magazine shoot or something, but that would be it. But this was quite important to get it right. And we do lots of different options. That was the other thing. You only see that one, but we might have tried to shoot 6 different options in different places, and it would really start to get on people's nerves, Yeah. But I'm always trying to get people, especially the guys, to look a bit happier because I always thought, well, you got like a great job and this music's joyous, but they all still want to be the cool dudes, cool and aloof. And I kind of stopped fighting it in the end. And I'll tell you one thing that's quite interesting, that as we've started to photograph more women, which is quite good, they are so much happier. Yeah, it's quite easy to photograph them.
Do you remember where this? So I used to live in Los Angeles. Like when
I got a feeling it was on. I'm not 100%.
The Hollywood or Sunset.
Yeah, I think it's on Sunset. Yeah,
Nice.
I'm
Because
pretty sure
that gig was at where it was at it was at the Chinese theater. Where was it?
The Mayan.
No, the Mayan. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. It was big. Big space. I remember that. And all those sort of fake Mayan statues on the walls and all that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, it's so cool.
No, that sounds really
cool.
And
there was there was some good people there as well. I think it was Halloween.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think it was Halloween.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think it was Halloween. So everybody was really dressed up because we don't do that here, or didn't do a bit more now, but certainly didn't do that then. So for me to see all these people who are like dressed up as like in their Halloween stuff was great,
Oh yeah. Well, it's really cool for us to hear the stories behind these iconic albums. I had a question for you. Now, what's your favorite kind of music? Because I'm getting a feeling that it's not necessarily like underground club music. And then on top of that, after you explain that, like, do you have a favorite global underground?
Well, it's really difficult, and I do feel bad because people say to me, "How come, how come you're doing it?" Well, I think not being having such a, for want of a better word, being such a sort of fan is kind of helped,
Definitely.
because I kind of see it slightly from a detached position, which I think kind of is quite good for what we've been doing. But I do have a massive, massive interest in all sorts of youth culture, even though I'm an old fella now. Youth culture is a huge part of growing up in Britain, and especially, and it's one of the things that's sort of I've always been, I'm never not going to be fascinated with. So I'm interested in everything from, so the fact that I didn't go to those clubs necessarily so much doesn't mean to say I wasn't particularly interested. But so I did so I come out of what was really a kind of like soul, rare groove. I like reggae a lot. I go to a lot of reggae things and a lot of soul, rare groove, that sort of era. Northern soul is a sort of big one as well. So I kind of sort of think of it as a sort of lineage anyway. So you got that whole scene from in Britain, especially from the sort of mods with their soul music going into Northern soul, where it goes into disco, goes into house, goes into all that's followed. Drum and bass takes stuff from British reggae as opposed to Jamaican reggae, all that sort of stuff. And so for me, it's all kind of linked, even if I don't but I don't have knowledge about any of them to like encyclopedic knowledge. I got friends who could give you serial numbers of Jamaican released reggae 45s, as opposed to the British ones. But I'm not like that. Sometimes I like lots of records, but I don't even know the name of them sometimes. But that's because I just really like the music, and I'm not a collector as such. I do have lots of old vinyl, but I'm not a collector like some people I know. So in answer to your question, I guess black music is my sort of thing. So it would be reggae, funk, soul, rare groove, house music, all that stuff. But I do like everything really. It depends what mood I'm in. If I'm in a Black Sabbath mood, I'm in a Black Sabbath mood, and it's whatever, it could be anything. But I'm also really interested in, the stuff my kids show me, they're always showing me new stuff, which is really, really, I think if you're just into music, you kind of want to listen to everything, and I don't pigeonhole it at all, I find when I go to the clubs with the GU that within 5 or 10 minutes, it's just euphoric. It doesn't matter that I don't understand all of it or whatever, or know who it's by or whatever. To me, it's just still there, and it's like, oh man, it takes me to the same place as probably some of the people in the room. So I guess that's my answer to that. Although I did go to a lot of early raves in fields. I remember that in the sort of late 80s, because a lot of my friends who were into soul music and funk and all that, they maybe if they were like a year or two younger than me, they would have like just it would have been a natural progression to have just gone. So I did stand in fields in England with people, with big sound systems and things. But by the time it got into like the early 90s and things like that, I wasn't going out quite so much. I was really concentrating on my career because I only just started assisting in the very early 90s as a photographer. So I spent a lot of time just sort of doing things around that. And so going out was a lot less. And I think it was also the culture then, it's not so much anymore. And I'm really pleased for it. But you kind of got to a certain age and you kind of felt like you couldn't go to those places because you would be like the oldest swinger in town, but now it's completely different, you know.
Yeah.
So there was a sort of like a natural progression of not going to certain things. But no, I love all of it really. There's not much I don't like. I can tell you I really don't like auto-tuned voices. That really
Me
winds
neither.
me up. That sort of that stuff that sounds a bit like the Chipmunks. Sort of voices that I can't get my head around that. But that's about it really. No. It's a favorite global. Don't know. I couldn't tell you that. I mean, Danny Howe's. I really like Danny Howe's in Miami because I just remember the gig being really funky, and it was kind of like it sounded like the stuff that I would listen to myself, although it wasn't, you know, the rare groove or the funky soul in its purest form. It felt like it had that feel to it. Danny's was good. The Brooklyn one's good, isn't it? I guess it's hard to say. It depends what mood you're in, you know. I mean, I'm not really one. I don't know who does. Do people listen to it in their house, or do they listen to it in the car, or is it just for the club? I can't quite work it out, you know. What do you think about it?
I think like I don't know. I find myself like listening to it in all different sorts of atmospheres. Also with like 44 albums or whatever, you have your specific ones for specific moods.
Exactly.
Like Nick Warren in Amsterdam, I listen to in the gym. When I'm writing, it's like Sasha San Francisco disc 1. It's like super lucid. When I'm driving at night, it's Nick Warren GU24 Reykjavik, because that one is just like so cool to me and so like down tempo, but has this crazy journey vibe to it. Same, or if I'm like partying or like getting lit, it's like Deep Dish 25 CD2, where it's just like progressive bangers. I don't know. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I love the way you can pinpoint what mix, because it's not about songs, it's about that journey, isn't it?
Yeah,
exactly.
It's like
the whole is greater than the.
So it's like a piece of music, like
points.
A proper orchestra. I mean, I really need to listen to them more. That's probably what it is. You know, I probably just haven't listened to them enough because they're so close. I get them, you know. I mean, this one's never been opened, you know. I've got quite a few that have never been opened, but when I open them, I literally look at the booklet. And it's not because I guess I should be more curious about it, really. I think it's just because they become such a thing in terms of the visual for me that I've not really given them enough. I'm going to start listening to them. I got a CD player over there. I'm going to start putting them on. I know it's terrible, isn't it? After 30 years, I've hardly listened to them.
Yeah. You're literally working on the project. It's kind of like me with some videos that I make. It's like you publish a video, never watching it again, even if it's like something awesome. I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I should. I think, to be honest with you, it's kind of weird that I haven't given as much time as I should have done to this sort of genre of music in a way. And it's not because of any dislike or anything. It's just, I guess, I just don't know why. I've got no excuse whatsoever. I'm going to start listening to them, and I hope I get as excited on that journey. I'm going to listen to them in my room, actually, in my studio, my little studio.
But yeah,
do you have like I don't know, this might be tough to answer, but do you have like a most memorable trip from all of these that you've done, or I'm super curious too. Like, was there ever a trip where like things went terribly wrong, like with the flights or something?
Right. So I can't pinpoint any really like a real favorite, because there's probably too many. Because I really enjoyed this. I enjoy the process of it so much. I mean, when I first think about it, I get a little bit anxious, and I'm like, oh, I hope we could sort of make such a good job of it this time as well, and all that. So it's quite a lot to sort of keep perpetuate. But I feel less anxious about it now because things are a lot more left to chance. But also, I mean, I really enjoyed. Actually, I really enjoyed the Brooklyn one a lot because I haven't been there for so long to America, and it's been the first time for a long time going to the States, and I love it there. That was really good because obviously as well, the other thing is, as Brits, we hardly go to Brooklyn. We go to Manhattan, you know. So that was really, really good. I really, really like that. Uh, there's so many. South America's really, really good. Mexico City was really nice. There were so many, so many. I mean, we've just been to one in Europe, which I really like. That was good. Too many, too many. They were all really good. There was a few that were like, I'm not really that bothered about going back there or what have you. Or it was aggro. But that's fine. There's only been a couple of real disasters, but mostly it's the weather. So with Dave Seaman, I don't think it stopped raining, so we ended up having to shoot that. I can't remember where we shot that, but we ended up shooting it at night time because it looked so dull during the day. So we tried to make it look like exciting, just by having the city lights.
The Buenos Aires shot.
Sorry,
the Buenos Aires shot.
Yeah. So there's ways about, because if someone looks really, really grey and dull, it's quite difficult to sort of lift that, especially then. Not so much now. You can strip in skies and things like that if we really wanted to, but we don't. But that we shot at night time because then at least you've got all that glowing cityscape and all that. I did get my equipment impounded in South Africa, which was difficult, but that was a nervous couple of days, because when you're taking equipment, you're supposed to really use legal carnets and things like that, which I don't know if you know about that, but because we used to take quite a lot of equipment, you're supposed to kind of like sign it out your country, sign it back in, kind of sort of thing. So you're not buying another country without paying the taxes or trying to import stuff that you've bought there cheap and stuff like that. So that was quite scary, but it turned out all I needed to do was bribe the security guy.
Yeah.
I just needed to give him it was quite cheap, about £100, and I got the stuff back. So that was one trip. But yeah, no, apart from that, it's not been too bad, which I'm amazed, if I'm honest, because I work with other clients who are kind of, it's all nailed down, that stuff, quite often. The biggest thing is, worrying about whether the equipment's going to turn up, whether, the weather's going to be fine and all that sort of thing. But when this working with global has always been, it'll happen, and it always does. Which is kind of mad, really.
Yeah.
When you think of what they've done, and where they go, and the amount of, there's probably quite a bit of money being spent on it, on flights and all sorts of things like that. So it's not without risk,
Definitely. Especially in the days of film, I imagine. You're not even going back Jesus. And you're like, I pray this shit turned out okay.
Well, I was kind of brought up on that anyway, so it's kind of not such a big scary thing for me, because I was kind of used to it, working with other photographers. We'd done lots of trips, and I knew, about X-ray machines and about, I'd literally carry the film. That would be my hand luggage, because that's the most precious thing after the shoot. I could lose all my equipment, but as long as I got the film, at least the job's done and it's safe. Yeah. So that's kind of different, but and we did try and process film sometimes in the country. We try to do it in New York, but it didn't. It was like real skin of the teeth stuff, because I always thought New York being 24 hours, really like London, really sort of like, because you can get a roll of film back in the day in London processed within 2 hours back in your hand, and it would be fine, 24 hours a day. But it wasn't like that. and I didn't know. And I dropped this stuff off, and this guy was like, "I'll be Monday. Oh, I'm leaving Sunday," you know.
Yeah.
And I think I literally, we went to the processors, the lab, as we were getting to pick up processed film, some of the stragglers, as we were going to the airport, because they'd been late. There was a delay or something. And we're like, well, I'm not going to be here. You know, we have to go. We have to do. Otherwise, they were going to end up having to send it to me via mail, you know. So that was that. We never did that again. I always looked, yeah, but we took a lot of film as well. We
Yeah.
used to take a lot of stuff.
It's so crazy to think about. Like,
I know everything.
It's so much nicer now.
yeah,
I mean, I literally take,
you put it on a hard drive and you're like, I'm good.
Let's just say even the DJs, they don't have to carry the crates of vinyl anymore.
Yeah. I mean, the excess luggage bills were like extraordinary. You know.
Oh my God.
I mean, I think in running into the hundreds sometimes. You know, I think one of them was about £600 once. You know.
Oh wow.
Jeez.
But that's because I would take probably about 120 kilograms. What's that? Probably in pounds, probably 200 pounds.
250 pounds. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I could probably take 40, but I can kind of sneak it on the hand luggage and, you know, spread it around a little bit. So I rarely pay excess luggage, but it was difficult not to then, because we had even the bag of film probably was, you know, 10 kilograms, you know.
Yeah. No, it's so cool. Well, I think first, thank you for sharing all these awesome stories behind these albums we love so much. But I think one thing that people don't necessarily realize is that these photos that are so iconic to us, you have this robust online marketplace. You have the shop, the Dean Belcher shop on your website that has been, and I'm going to get this, I'm determined to get this episode out in time before Christmas, because it is my go-to spot for Christmas presents, holiday presents, birthday presents for my friends or for people I meet professionally that are into this, because you can actually buy the prints.
Yeah.
I remember I bought them for my roommate. You can buy the prints of your photos. David's doing this like crazy photo acetate pairing thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like is that like, are there going to be, do you have any like exciting plans for your shop? What's up on the shop right now?
Well,
just
funny
because
enough, I just put
the listeners are collectors. They love this stuff.
Well, I've just put some stuff up today of some new people. I mean, I do put other work that's not related to Global Underground, but a lot of it is. And I've just put some new stuff up this morning, actually. But it's really a process of going through it. There's so much stuff, and I don't want to put everything on there so that people have to rifle through stuff. So I'm trying to find stuff that I think people will actually be interested in. I'm really open to people. If people have got something they've seen and they go, I can't find it on your website, email me and I'll either put it on there or we'll work something out so that you can get the same, you know, get what you want via the same process. Because there's too much. I get people asking often for like things that I haven't thought about, and they go, yeah, that picture of so and so with the flary lights from 20 years ago. And I'm like, right, okay, I don't have that, but if you want it, I can find it, you know. So yeah, I'm in the process. That's literally something that's only happened in the sort of past year or two that started to really get an interest. People are interested in it. So, you know, I think it makes nice gifts.
Oh, it's so people thoughtful like and it's so awesome. It's and
it's a bit of history, you know, as well.
Oh yeah,
especially for people who were kind of there at the time and going, oh yeah, cool, you know.
No, it's really cool, and I just want to like. It's so interesting because I'm always messaging so many longtime fans, and they're like, did you see that did you see this website? And it's your website and it's all the
Oh,
prints.
that's
I'm
really
like,
nice
no,
of you
I
to
know,
say
it's
that.
crazy. Like,
Well, I've just revamped it. I revamped it like the middle of this year, just sort of set it up slightly differently. And it's much slicker now, you know, the way it's processed through, you know, the way the mechanics of it back behind the scenes work. So it gets processed better and prints are made quicker and it's a little bit easier and postage is all much more clearer and well packed and all that sort of thing. So next year I'm going to be really pushing it quite hard and adding lots more stuff to it, you know. So if anybody does have anything in particular they're after, let me know.
oh yeah, definitely. And
I was going to ask.
But you can go via my website, my normal website. Just Google Dean Belcher. There aren't many with that name. And in the bottom, in there, it says print shop or print sales, and it'll take you to the shop.
I was going to ask, have you thought of doing like a coffee table book with all
I'd
of
love
the
to.
little underground stuff?
That is something that I was kind of hoping to do this year, but we had some family issues with the bereavement and that sort of thing. So I ended up doing a lot of work sorting family stuff out, which kind of got in the way of all sorts of things. But next year, yeah, I mean, we did. I mean, it's really difficult because these books that they put out with the albums are so nice.
Yeah.
I mean, the nearest one we ever got to doing that was with the 20 book, which we did for the 20th anniversary, where we went through everything and tried to sort of create something that spanned those 20 years. But yeah, I really want to do something like that. But I'm kind of thinking of doing it as a, I don't know how to do it yet, but there's a few ideas. Maybe something to do with just all the clubbers, and then maybe something to do with the street stuff, or maybe a mix of all. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah.
But there's been a few really good books come out the last couple of years from other photographers who are photographing predominantly the UK dance music scene, and there aren't many who have photographed it worldwide as much as myself and maybe two or three others who worked for Mix Mag and those sort of places that ended up traveling to do it, you know. So yeah, I think there's some room for that, because I think it's really interesting how the differences are between Britain and all the other countries. You know, I kind of watched it grow in America from that Sasha picture to Danny last year with a huge crowd, and in between that. And it's the same with lots of other countries, you know, South America and Asia and all that. You know, it felt like as it was underground in the UK and it started to go overground a bit, it was just starting off in other places. So it's kind of quite interesting to sort of follow that trajectory, you know, before it's got too huge, you know.
Oh, definitely.
But now it's quite. I liked it in Brooklyn. Everybody was really, really up for it. You know, it's good.
Oh yeah,
I was gonna say like the there's some pictures of like people on the boardwalk, and
oh, that was Coney Island. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I've never been there. It was brilliant.
I don't even know if I've been there, to be honest. But it was really cool. It seemed like everybody was super friendly.
Oh, my favorite picture from that whole thing, I don't know if they used in the book because I haven't seen it yet, is there were two girls down. So you know that club was open air, right? So I was up on the top and there's no roof. So I looked over the wall, and down below there's the whole city behind you. But down below there was two girls who were dancing all night long outside, having the best party ever on their own. They had a couple of drinks on the side and they were just dancing all night. And I think it's just they either couldn't get tickets or didn't have the money to get in, but they were listening to the music just on the other side of the wall. It's great.
Oh, that's awesome.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I hope it made it into the book because they looked like they were having the best time ever.
Yeah, that's great. But yeah, well, I'm not sure if you have any other questions.
No, I think that, I mean, this was fantastic.
It's so cool for us. Like these stories, I mean, you lived it. So few people like I don't know, that we spoke to like lived it on the front line. Like you were there for these iconic moments behind the
It was
camera.
great. Yeah.
Oh, it's
I
so
hope
cool
there's
to
some
hear
more.
the stories behind them. It's like,
I know. I wish
I'll
I
have to
had
try and
more
remember them.
CDs here.
Now, one day I'll try and remember them all, but there is actually, I have got somewhere a whole bunch of messages, emails, and things like that that people used to send, talking about some of the things that you talked about. And I've got some quite interesting, people saying how they got, oh, I have the best gig, best job in the world, and what their favorite pictures are. And what's, for want of a better word, it's not fan mail. It's just people that are kind of like interested in what I've been doing specifically. I'll have to dig them out one day. They're for the book one day.
yeah,
Be-
that's so cool to like be able to, like the story you shared with us about the people in the Sasha photo. They go on and get married, and then like it's
Yeah.
just like it's so there's so much magnitude with these photos, and it's just so cool. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I'm so glad that I've been part of it. I always say to Andy, it's been a real, it is a real privilege, mostly because it's something that is quite, it's underground. I think that's the thing. I'm not, I could be, I could have aspired to be in the photography who followed you two around and all that, but it was never going to be, because my whole world has always been a little bit about the periphery rather than the sort of mainstream. So, in a lot of ways, I've started to realize in the sort of past sort of 10 years that actually it was probably never going to be anyway, because that's not where I'm sort of sat myself, or ever have been. So yeah, it's been really good. I'm so pleased to have, I didn't appreciate quite as much as I did at the beginning what it was. But then I don't know if anybody did, because it was,
yeah,
who knew, you know. But
no,
now that it's happened, it's cool. Yeah.
well,
It's good.
we're super stoked that these GUs keep coming out and you keep photographing them.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for this book. I just implore you to see it through, because
I'm
that's
trying
going to
to
be
do it. I'm
something
trying to get
really,
it done
really
properly
cool.
with a publisher and what have you. So rather than do it myself, but
Yeah.
No,
it might
definitely.
end up being a crowdfunder at some point. Who knows?
I'll pre-order it.
Oh yeah, I'm pre-order 20. But yeah, man, we just wanted to thank you for coming
Oh no, thank
and
you for having
joining
me
us
on.
today. We've been, I mean, yeah, our fanship of you is no secret, and
I still owe you some batteries, don't I?
no, yeah, it's so funny. In Brooklyn, I had to go on like a strike mission to the gas station to get
Batteries.
battery for the camera. But no,
Yeah,
bro,
I
I was
completely
looking through my
forgot to give you the
PayPal
money as
history. I
well,
was
didn't
doing
I?
like a little audit of myself, and I see like Dean Belcher, $5.76,
Yeah, I still
AA
owe you some money.
batteries. You're
One day
you're
I'll
good
do
by
it.
me, bro.
I'll buy it. When I see you in the UK next, I'll see
Yeah,
you.
yeah. But yeah, man, thank you so much. I hope you have a great holiday season.
And you.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah,
And I look forward to gifting my friends some prints, and it should be
well, let me know. We'll sort
yeah,
something out.
yeah,
Make
yeah.
dates.
Yeah, definitely.
But no, thanks for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. It's so nice to talk about these things. And you're going to need a big edit because I like to chat. So